In modern aerial warfare, invisibility is often the goal, and every tiny detail counts. A single bolt protruding a millimeter too far can catch a radar beam. A stray line of code in a flight computer can ground an entire fleet. This is the ruthless realm in which two cutting-edge stealth fighters, the American F-35 Lightning II and China's new Shenyang J-35, are vying for supremacy. It is a high-stakes technological duel where perfection is not optional, and the consequences of a flaw can be monumental. We are about to explore this competition where nothing is trivial and the margin between triumph and disaster can hinge on something as small as a fastener or a software glitch. At first glance, the F-35 Lightning II and the J-35 might appear to be distant cousins, products of different nations and histories, yet they share a striking familial likeness in concept. The F-35, developed by Lockheed Martin, is a single-engine, single-seat stealth multi-role fighter, bristling with advanced sensors and the ability to fly at supersonic speeds. It was conceived as the jack-of-all-trades for the United States and its allies, an aircraft versatile enough to dogfight at high altitude, drop precision bombs, sneak past radar systems, and even land vertically on a ship's deck. In short, the F-35 was meant to do everything. From the razor-edged angles of its fuselage that scatter enemy radar waves to the secretive coatings on its skin that swallow radar energy, every aspect was designed for invisibility. The F-35 supposedly has a radar cross-section comparable to a golf ball. China's J-35, meanwhile, is the newer face in this game of ghosts. A twin-engine, carrier-capable stealth fighter, the J-35 has only recently emerged from secrecy to take its place on the deck of China's newest supercarrier. Just weeks ago, under the glow of floodlights on the carrier Fujian, J-35 prototypes were hurled into the night sky via electromagnetic catapult, marking a historic first for the Chinese Navy. In those moments, with the J-35's afterburners flaring blue against the dark, one could sense a shift in the balance of naval air power. To understand how we arrived at this face-off, we must rewind to the birth of the F-35. The F-35 Lightning II was born from the Joint Strike Fighter program, launched in the 1990s with an almost audacious goal: to replace a whole range of existing jets, including F-16s, F-18s, and AV-8B Harriers, with one common design. Like a modern military spin on the myth of the One Ring, it was supposed to be one fighter to rule them all. The vision was seductive: a single basic aircraft adaptable into three variants. One for the Air Force, the F-35A, a conventional takeoff model. One for the Marines, the F-35B, with a revolutionary short takeoff and vertical landing system. And one for the Navy, the F-35C, reinforced for carrier operations. In 2001, after a heated competition, Lockheed's sleek, delta-winged X-35 beat Boeing's alternative prototype to win the contract. Lockheed's prize was the largest defense contract in history to build an advanced fighter for the United States and a host of allies. But with that prize came immense technical challenges. Molding a single airframe to such divergent needs was like trying to design a race car that can also be a four-wheel drive truck and a helicopter. The engineers had to cram a lift fan for the F-35B's vertical landings right behind the pilot's seat, a feature reminiscent of earlier Cold War-era designs. They had to devise a swiveling thrust vectoring nozzle that could point downward for landing and a labyrinth of ducts and doors that open and close in perfect choreography to balance the hovering jet. All variants had to share the same basic shape, so the F-35's fuselage became stout and deep to accommodate the lift fan in the B model, even in versions that did not need it. It was an engineering tour de force, and as critics would later quip, an overstuffed design, packing so many functions that it threatened to burst at the seams. The F-35's journey from drawing board to frontline unit was anything but smooth. As the aircraft took shape in the 2000s, reality sank in. Trading simplicity for universality carried a steep price. The program's size and complexity ballooned, costs soared far beyond initial estimates, and schedules slipped year after year. By the 2010s, the F-35 was regularly making headlines, but often for the wrong reasons. It became the most expensive weapons program in history, projected to cost over $1.5 trillion over its lifetime. A United States senator famously likened it to a trillion-dollar tragedy. Part of the problem was a decision that seemed sensible at first: start building the jets even as testing was underway to speed up deployment. Instead, this approach turned into a quagmire. Hundreds of early production F-35s had to be retrofitted with fixes for problems discovered during testing. It was as if you started assembling a complex puzzle, only to find later that some pieces did not quite fit, requiring you to go back and trim and adjust pieces already in place. The result was costly do-overs, delays, and some embarrassing difficulties. By 2014, when the Marine Corps was eager to declare the first F-35B squadron operational, testers were still wrestling with software bugs that caused mysterious radar glitches and sensor issues. Maintenance crews were grappling with a bulky logistics system that at times would not even let them log in to see what parts were needed. The Lightning II was proving ironically slow in arriving, almost the antithesis of its electrifying moniker. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, something uncanny was happening. In late 2012, aviation watchers were stunned by blurry photos leaked from China, a strange jet, black and sleek, that looked like a smaller cousin of the American stealth fighters. It was dubbed FC-31 Gerfalcon by its manufacturer, Shenyang Aircraft Corporation, and informally called J-31 by analysts. The resemblance to the F-35 was hard to miss. Twin tail fins canted outward, internal weapons bays, and the same telltale design features used in American stealth designs. Western analysts raised their eyebrows. Was this parallel evolution, or had some of the F-35's jealously guarded secrets seeped into Shenyang's design labs? Just a year earlier, in 2011, news had broken that Chinese hackers had infiltrated the computer networks of United States defense contractors. In fact, in 2013, the Pentagon's acquisitions chief confirmed that stolen F-35 design data had helped accelerate foreign stealth fighter programs. United States intelligence knew that vast amounts of Joint Strike Fighter program data, including stealth shapes, radar frequencies, and engine schematics, had likely been sent to China. And there was a Chinese prototype that looked as if someone had taken an F-35 and an F-22, put them in a blender, and tweaked the recipe. To be sure, the FC-31, later evolving into what we now call J-35, was not an exact clone. It had two engines instead of the F-35's one, perhaps because China did not yet have a single engine powerful enough to match the F-35's mighty Pratt and Whitney F-135. Its nose and wings had their own distinctive contours. But many in the aerospace community saw the telltale signs of borrowing. One commentator wryly called the J-35 an F-35 with Chinese characteristics, capturing the blend of imitation and innovation. By the mid-2010s, while the F-35 was inching toward operational service in the West, China's prototype was undergoing its own growing pains. The early test model reportedly used underpowered Russian-made engines, the kind that powered older MiG-29 fighters. It struggled to meet performance targets. But Chinese aerospace was not standing still. They refined the design, building new prototypes with significant changes, lengthening the fuselage a bit, enlarging the wings, upgrading avionics. By 2019, a second iteration of the prototype had flown with noticeable improvements. A stealthier exhaust design here, a relocated tailhook there, a roomier weapons bay. This project was not officially endorsed by the Chinese military for years. It lingered as something of a private venture by Shenyang, likely in hopes of attracting either export buyers or the Chinese Navy's interest. But that changed as China's plans for a blue water navy, including new aircraft carriers, began to materialize. By 2020, the People's Liberation Army Navy clearly needed a next-generation carrier fighter. Their existing carrier planes were basically Chinese copies of 1980s-era Russian aircraft, big, heavy, non-stealth fighters that launched from ski-jump decks. The future carriers, like the then under-construction Fujian, would have modern electromagnetic catapults and demanded a cutting-edge aircraft to match, something stealthy that could take off fully loaded from a flat deck. All eyes turned to Shenyang's stealth fighter. Thus, the J-31 metamorphosed into the J-35, a legitimate program to field a carrier-borne stealth jet for China. In October 2021, a prototype with folding wingtips and catapult launch fittings had its first flight. From there, things moved quickly. By 2023, multiple J-35 prototypes were flying, including some painted in naval gray and bearing serial numbers indicating they belonged to a Navy test unit. In late 2024, a land-based variant called J-35A for the Air Force was unveiled at an air show, revealing that the Chinese plan, a family of stealth fighters paralleling the F-35's multi-variant concept. And then, in mid-2025, came the milestone that truly announced the J-35's arrival. The carrier Fujian, during sea trials, launched and recovered J-35s via catapult. For a brief instant, one might imagine United States Navy observers watching that video with a chill of recognition. We have seen this play before, and now it is not ours alone. So here we are, two advanced stealth fighters, often spoken of in the same breath because of their shared fifth-generation label. Let us start with the obvious: stealth. Both aircraft are built to be hard to detect on radar, but how they achieve that and how far each goes is a complex business. Stealth is not a single technology, but an all-encompassing approach affecting shape, materials, engine design, and even maintenance routines. The F-35 was built on the shoulders of earlier American stealth efforts, from the faceted F-117 of the 1980s to the super-maneuverable F-22 of the 2000s. It uses a combination of shaping and absorbent materials to reduce its radar cross-section. Look at an F-35 head-on. Its air intakes have a distinctive hump, a diverterless supersonic inlet that does away with radar-reflecting guide vanes and instead uses a curved bump to slow the airflow. Those inlets also lead to serpentine ducts that hide the engine's fan blades. The F-35 surfaces are a symphony of aligned angles. Every panel, edge, and screw is either hidden or sawtoothed to diffuse radar. Its skin is coated with advanced polymers that absorb electromagnetic energy. According to open-source information, the radar cross-section is on the order of a small bird or insect, extremely low from the front. China, having studied these principles, designed the J-35 in much the same spirit. The J-35's fuselage shows careful faceting and blending. It too carries weapons internally and probably wears radar-absorbent coatings. China has been developing its own stealth paint and laminates. Intriguingly, Chinese state media recently boasted that the J-35's radar signature is smaller than a human palm. This might be a bit of patriotic exaggeration. After all, stealth efficacy depends not just on design, but on manufacturing tolerances and quality control. A stealth jet is like a precision Swiss watch. A tiny misalignment or a rough finish can compromise its low observability. The United States learned through decades of trial and error how to mass-produce stealth aircraft with exacting tolerances. China is essentially compressing those decades of experience into a few years. However, the very fact that Chinese sources are touting such a tiny radar cross-section suggests they are confident in their design's radar slipperiness. Notably, the J-35 reportedly incorporates metamaterials in its construction, exotic composite structures engineered at the microscopic level to interact with radar in unusual ways. Stealth, however, is more than just evading radar. It is also about minimizing heat and sound signatures to foil infrared sensors. Both have embedded engines deep in the fuselage and likely use special coatings or additives in the fuel to reduce infrared flare. The F-35's single exhaust is a multifaceted nozzle with serrated edges that mix hot gases with cooler air, dimming its heat plume. The J-35, with two engines, has a somewhat tougher challenge. Two exhausts mean twice the heat sources, though each smaller than the F-35's single big one. Early prototypes of the J-35 had conventional round nozzles, which stick out like hot bullseyes to thermal imagers. But recent images suggest the Chinese may be testing stealthier nozzle designs or cooling techniques. The F-35's designers opted for one very powerful engine, both for stealth and because of the space and weight limits imposed by the vertical landing variant. China's J-35 team went with two engines, likely because no single engine available to them could provide the needed thrust reliably. Now it is reported that the J-35 will use a brand new engine called the WS-19, fully indigenous, with medium thrust on the order of 24,000 pounds each in afterburner. Two of those would give the J-35 roughly 48,000 pounds of thrust combined, a bit more than the F-35's single F-135, which pumps out approximately 43,000 pounds. In theory, that could mean the J-35 might accelerate a tad faster or sustain speed better. But raw thrust is not everything. The J-35's empty weight is rumored around 17.5 tons, heavier than an F-35A at approximately 13.3 tons. So in terms of thrust-to-weight ratio, they could be neck and neck. The F-35's top speed is about Mach 1.6. The J-35 is said to reach about Mach 1.8, but these speeds are relatively modest compared to older fighters like the F-15 or Su-27, a conscious sacrifice of outright speed in favor of stealth shaping. Where twin engines do clearly help is in redundancy. If one engine fails, a twin-engine jet like the J-35 can limp home on the other. The F-35, by contrast, entrusts its life to a single power plant, albeit an extraordinarily well-engineered one. Pratt & Whitney's F-135 is often hailed as one of the most powerful and reliable fighter engines ever made. But even it is not immune to problems. A sobering example came on a June morning in 2014 at Eglin Air Force Base. An F-35A was rolling down the runway for takeoff when suddenly the rear of the aircraft erupted in flames. An investigation found that a turbine fan blade had excessively rubbed against its housing, overheating and cracking apart. Essentially, a microscopic design flaw and imprecise tolerance led to a catastrophic engine failure. The entire global F-35 fleet was grounded for weeks. A fix was devised, and flying resumed. But the incident was a chilling reminder. In these machines, a seemingly trivial detail can trigger a multi-million-dollar crisis. The J-35 has not had a public incident like that, at least not yet, but as it moves from prototype to active service, it will face the same unforgiving reality of high-performance aviation. If engines are the heart of these fighters, avionics and software are the soul. Pilots who have flown the F-35 often say it is less an airplane and more a flying supercomputer that just happens to shoot missiles. The Lightning II was designed around the concept of sensor fusion. It sucks in data from its radar, infrared sensors, and electronic surveillance gear, then fuses it into one cohesive picture for the pilot. Instead of a cockpit cluttered with dials and screens, the F-35 presents information intuitively on a big touchscreen and in the visor of the pilot's helmet. The F-35's helmet-mounted display system is a piece of gear worth around $400,000. Essentially, virtual reality goggles meets fighter pilot. It projects infrared and night vision images from cameras around the plane, so the pilot can see through the jet's floor and walls by simply glancing down. Turn your head left and you might be looking straight through your wing via live video feeds. Key flight and targeting information floats on the visor, eliminating the need for a traditional heads-up display. It is astounding technology when it works. But in the F-35's early years, this super helmet had a learning curve. Initially, some pilots experienced a disorienting green glow in the visor when flying on pitch-dark nights. More alarmingly, the whole system was heavy, about 5.4 pounds. Tests revealed that a lightweight pilot, say under 136 pounds, risked serious neck injury if ejecting because the heavy helmet could jerk their head violently. In fact, for a time, the United States services barred smaller pilots from flying the F-35 for safety. The solution was to shave a few ounces off the helmet and adjust the ejection seat's rocket timings. This got the risk down to acceptable levels, but the whole saga had a faintly absurd aura. Still, to the F-35's credit, these issues have been largely ironed out. Pilots now rave about the situational awareness the helmet and sensors give. 4-ship flights of F-35s essentially act as one unit, invisibly data-linked, each jet seeing what the other's sensors pick up. The pilot can even tap a touchscreen to send target data to a wingman or to a command center far away. This is network-centric warfare come alive. China, for its part, is determined not to be left behind in the realm of smart avionics. The J-35 is said to feature its own sensor fusion and modern cockpit design. According to reports, it sports an advanced electronically scanned array radar, likely the KLJ-7A model, and has electro-optical targeting system and distributed aperture system cameras, much like the F-35. It took the United States years to perfect the software that blends 6 infrared feeds into one seamless sphere of vision for the pilot. One can imagine Chinese engineers hustling to write algorithms that can do the same. There are rumors that the J-35's cockpit has a large panoramic display, similar to the F-35's single giant touchscreen, and perhaps even its own helmet heads-up display. If so, the Chinese pilot too will have that transparent jet experience, peering down at night to see an enemy ship or terrain below. However, just as the F-35's high-tech systems had teething problems, the J-35's undoubtedly will as well. In a dry turn of irony, China's aerospace sector now faces some of the same headaches that plagued the F-35 program: complex software integration, debugging millions of lines of code, and creating a maintenance infrastructure to support a digital flying machine. The F-35 program infamously tried to revolutionize maintenance with a system called ALICE, the Autonomic Logistics Information System. ALICE was supposed to automatically tell ground crews what parts to replace or repair, scheduling itself for maintenance. In practice, it earned a reputation for being glitchy and cumbersome. There were times it grounded jets simply because it wrongly thought a part had expired. Things got so bad that the United States eventually decided to replace ALICE with a new system called Odin. Now consider, the J-35 will require a similar maintenance and diagnostic ecosystem. Will China make a more streamlined system, or will their ground crews be scratching their heads at error messages too? We do not know yet. But the point is, beyond the aerodynamic and stealth comparisons, so much of the F-35 versus J-35 rivalry will hinge on bits and bytes, ease of use, and reliability. A stealth fighter is only as good as its uptime. Here, the F-35, despite improvements, has struggled. As of the mid-2020s, Barely half of the United States F-35 fleet is mission-ready at any given time, well below the 80% goal. Issues with spare parts, repairs taking too long, and those complex systems mean many jets sit awaiting fixes. The J-35, being new, might have an initial honeymoon of being clean and unused, but maintaining stealth coatings, advanced sensors, and 2 jet engines per plane is a costly, labor-intensive affair. Now, what about how these jets actually perform in the field? On the American side, after years of delays, the F-35 finally started seeing action. Israel was the first to use it in combat in 2018, sneaking into Syrian airspace to strike targets, reportedly undetected. The United States soon followed, flying F-35s on strike missions against insurgents. Pilots often report that in exercises, the F-35 can engage enemy fighters before the adversary even knows it is there, thanks to its stealth and sensor fusion. In mock dogfights, older jets struggled to lock onto the F-35 until it was too late. However, when dogfights did happen within visual range, there were early reports of the F-35 being outmaneuvered by F-16s. That was somewhat misleading. The test in question had the F-35 in a non-final configuration. Nevertheless, it highlighted that the Lightning II can hold its own in close combat, but it is not designed to be a purebred dogfighter. Instead, it is designed to kill or evade the enemy before the merge. The J-35's intended performance is likely similar. Chinese sources describe it as a multi-role stealth strike fighter with high agility, 9G capable, and armed with advanced long-range missiles. Its role is envisioned as both an air superiority fighter and a deep strike platform, able to take on other fighters or attack warships and ground targets. In fact, state media emphasized that the J-35 can carry a robust array of weapons, advanced long-range air-to-air missiles for beyond visual range duels, as well as anti-ship and land attack missiles internally. On paper, a J-35 could attempt to sneak up and take a shot at an F-35 before being seen, just as vice versa. How might that encounter play out? It could boil down to whose sensors are better and who spots whom first. The F-35's radar and its passive sensor suite are world-class, battle-tested, and constantly upgraded. The J-35's radar is newer and, while likely very capable, not proven in combat. Pilot training and experience will be decisive too, areas where the United States and its allies have a long head start in operating stealth jets. By contrast, Chinese pilots are only now beginning to train in stealth tactics. Some United States defense officials have mused that if equally equipped, the outcome of an F-35 versus J-35 engagement might largely depend on pilot quality and support systems. It is not an old-fashioned mismatch of raw power. It is a subtler contest of networks and knowledge. Beyond the hypothetical dogfights, there are the strategic implications of these jets. The F-35 was always more than just a United States fighter. It was designed as a coalition linchpin. Allies from Europe to Asia joined the program, contributed funds, and are now flying their own F-35s. Over a dozen countries either have F-35s or are acquiring them, creating an unprecedented shared air capability. As of late 2025, over 1,200 F-35s have rolled off the production lines, and the United States plans to buy 2,456 of them in total. These jets will serve into the 2070s, meaning the F-35 will dominate Western air fleets for the next half-century. This massive scale has some benefits: economies of scale for parts, a huge base of experience and data, and continuous upgrades. The F-35 is not a static design. It is meant to evolve. A major Block 4 upgrade is underway, aiming to add new weapons, better electronic warfare tools, and enhanced computing. However, Block 4 has been plagued by delays and has been pared back due to complexity issues. Some improvements that need more engine power were deferred until a later engine upgrade arrives around 2033. So even as the jet is fielded, the cycle of catching up with promises continues. By the time a hypothetical F-35 versus J-35 confrontation might happen, the F-35 will likely have seen multiple software refreshes and gained capabilities not present in its early years. Its radar software might be tweaked to better detect stealthy targets, or it could be carrying next-generation long-range missiles that could outrange anything the J-35 carries. Moreover, the F-35 might be teamed with drones, the so-called loyal wingman concept, where a stealth fighter commands several semi-autonomous drones that scout ahead or absorb enemy fire. The United States is actively testing this concept. If it comes to fruition, one F-35 could essentially multiply itself on the battlefield. China is not far behind in this idea. They too are developing stealth drones and likely envision their J-35s working in tandem with unmanned wingmen. After all, warfare is trending toward distributed, networked operations. The J-35, being a product of the 2020s, might integrate some of these concepts from the ground up. One area where the two jets diverge is in the realm of vertical takeoff. The F-35B variant famously can land like a helicopter, a party trick that required huge design compromises. China's J-35 has no such capability. It is built for catapult launches and runway use only. This means the J-35 cannot operate from small assault carriers or highway strips the way the F-35B can. While the United States Marines relish the F-35B's ability to deploy stealth fighters from austere locations, one could argue that the sheer complexity of the vertical landing system is a burden the Chinese wisely chose not to bear. Indeed, every time a United States F-35B performs a vertical landing, it is a bit of a ballet of machinery. It works brilliantly now, but one can imagine a Chinese engineer watching that and muttering, "Perhaps not today." Instead, China focused on mastering catapult operations with the J-35, which, while still complex, rely on more traditional physics. A catapult launch is violent and high stress, but largely a mechanical interaction between the launch system and the aircraft's nose gear. It does not demand the jet to transform itself mid-air. This choice likely allowed the J-35 to be optimized as a simpler, lighter design than it would be if it had to accommodate a vertical lift fan. In a way, you could say the F-35 tried to do 3 jobs and ended up a compromise of all, whereas the J-35 is focusing on 2. Let us turn for a moment to the quirks and hidden flaws, those things not advertised in glossy brochures. We have touched on a few for the F-35. The heavy helmet, the maintenance software troubles, the engine fire scare. Early on, F-35 maintainers had to be careful about what cleaning solutions to use on the radar-absorbent coating, and repairing minor dings in stealth materials was an art requiring specialized facilities. There was even a period when F-35 pilots had to restrict supersonic flight time because at very high speeds, the extreme heat and airflow were found to damage sections of the tail on certain variants, a limitation that had to be managed until fixes could be applied. Critics had a field day with such tidbits. The F-35 program learned to be humble in the face of physics and material science. Every cutting-edge solution introduced new wrinkles of its own. And yet, with iterative fixes, most of these issues have been addressed or mitigated. By 2025, the F-35's availability and reliability metrics were improving, and seasoned pilots and crew had figured out the rhythms and rituals to keep the jet running. Still, the Lightning II is undoubtedly demanding in the maintenance hangar, needing extensive checkups and a high logistics tail. In 2022, it was estimated to cost around $33,000 per hour of flight and upkeep. The J-35, as it enters service, will reveal its own gremlins. One likely suspect: engines. China's track record on new turbofan engines is spotty. Early examples of indigenous engines used on earlier Chinese fighters had shorter lifespans and quality issues compared to their Russian equivalents. A more recent engine, meant for the larger J-20 stealth jet, struggled for years with reliability at full thrust. Now the WS-19 powering the J-35 is brand new and unproven in operational conditions. It is one thing to perform well in a handful of prototype flights, another to do so day in and day out on a carrier at sea, sucking in salty air, getting baked on a sweltering flight deck, then slammed with cooling ocean spray. Carrier operations are brutal on airframes and engines. Every arrested landing on a carrier is like a minor car crash for the plane, and every catapult shot is a punch to the gut. The United States has over 50 years of experience operating high-performance jets from carriers, and even so, their jets age quickly under those conditions. China is just entering this world. The J-35 will undoubtedly face unanticipated issues as it learns to live at sea, and each will require an engineering solution or procedural workaround. In that sense, the J-35's real test is only beginning now that prototypes are becoming production models. As the J-35 begins to enter service, the strategic calculus in the Asia-Pacific is shifting. China deploying a stealth fighter on carriers is a signal. The gap between United States and Chinese naval aviation qualitatively is narrowing. A United States carrier strike group for decades had a comfortable edge with its F-18s and then F-35Cs under an umbrella of early warning aircraft and dense defenses. Now, a Chinese carrier group with J-35s starts to resemble a mini United States Navy, at least in form. The J-35's arrival means a Chinese carrier can send out fighters that are not easily tracked by opposing radars, complicating any potential United States or Allied response in a conflict. Scenarios like a Taiwan contingency or a South China Sea standoff now have to account for stealthy Chinese jets appearing where before there were none. Japan, for example, which operates F-35s, must consider that any conflict over disputed islands could involve Chinese J-35s trying to sneak past the radar line. Japanese defense circles have openly expressed concern. Their shiny new F-35s might soon meet a challenger in the J-35. Similarly, Taiwan's aging fighters and air defenses now face not just the looming specter of the larger Chinese J-20, but eventually a carrier-borne stealth threat from multiple angles. The United States, for its part, is already looking beyond the F-35, developing the next-generation air dominance fighter, a sixth-generation platform. Nothing spurs innovation like competition. One could argue that the rapid progress of Chinese stealth fighters has lit a fire under Western efforts to push to the next level. There is also a curious twist. The J-35, once seen as an imitator of the F-35, might become an export competitor. Several countries that are not in the American sphere might seek an advanced jet from China. Pakistan, for instance, has already signaled interest in acquiring the J-35 to modernize its air force. If that deal happens, it would put a stealth fighter in Pakistani hands, potentially, before India gets one. Similarly, other nations not aligned with the West might find the Chinese stealth jet an attractive option. In the end, comparing the F-35 and J-35 is not about declaring a winner today. It is about appreciating a rapidly evolving contest. The F-35 Lightning II, after years of struggle and curses muttered by mechanics at 2 in the morning, is now a combat-tested, formidable pillar of Western air power. Its edge lies not just in the jet itself, but in the rich ecosystem around it. The training, the joint tactics, the decades of stealth doctrine development, and the industrial base that can pump them out by the dozens. The Shenyang J-35 is the newcomer that in a short time has nearly caught up technologically, at least on paper, and is poised to give China its own stealthy spear tip. It benefits from being designed later, learning from the F-35's tribulations, and from a national will to close the capability gap quickly. Yet it still must prove itself in service, at sea, and potentially under fire. As these two fighters move forward, they also drive each other. The presence of the J-35 will likely spur the F-35 community to hasten improvements, better stealth coatings, new tactics, perhaps even a midlife upgrade with an enhanced engine. Conversely, if the F-35's next upgrades give it a new trick, you can bet China will incorporate something similar or counter it on their jets as soon as possible. It is a technological dance of moves and counter-moves. And remember, both sides are already conceptualizing sixth-generation aircraft where even stealthier designs, drone control, and advanced artificial intelligence will play roles. Imagine a tense encounter in, say, 2030. A United States carrier strike group is patrolling blue waters, and a Chinese carrier group steams in contested seas. Neither necessarily wants war, but both project power. High above, F-35Cs from the United States carrier sweep the skies, while J-35s from the Fujian rise to meet them in a show of presence. They keep their distance, their stealth and jamming making them shadows on each other's sensors. Both sides know that in this arena, every detail, every radar emission, every piece of data gleaned can tip off the other. It is a silent duel of detection and counter-detection, a far cry from the noisy air combat of yesteryear. Perhaps nothing dramatic happens that day. They circle and observe and then return to their decks. But the world will watch that tableau and see not just two jets, but two systems, two national technological wills staring each other down. Each aircraft up there is the sum of thousands of decisions and solutions. This alloy versus that composite, this algorithm versus that sensor. Each is a flying manifestation of a nation's strengths and weaknesses. And it is often the hidden things that will decide who has the upper hand, the quality of a radar module connection, the efficiency of a cooling pump, the integrity of encrypted communication. A bolt, a line of code, a hidden flaw, or a brilliant innovation, they can determine the outcome of not just a single engagement, but a whole strategy. The F-35 and J-35 story, therefore, is more than a tale of two jets. It is a testament to the fact that in modern war, victory favors the most detail-oriented. Both the Lightning II and its new Chinese rival embody this truth. Each is prodigious, lethal, and shrouded in secrecy, yet painfully vulnerable if mismanaged. The rivalry between them will likely push the boundaries of aerospace engineering for years to come. As one wave of technology crests and another rises, the only certainty is that neither side can afford complacency. In this arena, today's advantage can become tomorrow's footnote, with one breakthrough or one blunder. And so the Lightning II and the J-35 race forward, head-to-head but never quite visible to each other, chasing an ever-moving threshold of excellence. The world waits to see whose myriad tiny details, whose bolts and code, will prevail when these two phantom fighters finally meet in earnest. One thing is certain, the contest will be decided in those shadows where stealth and substance intersect, and the smallest hinge could swing the biggest door in the sky.